We're now joined by Shruti Dasgupta, international affairs expert, to discuss this update in more detail. Shruti, Iran's Supreme Leader has delivered a message and claimed victory over the, quote, Zionist regime. What are your thoughts on that? And can you analyse it a bit for us?
Sure. It's very simple for us. Iran, or in fact, not just Iran, any Islamic nation, unless their every bone is broken, they kind of tend to come back with this reaction. If you look at Operation Sindoor in India-Pakistan conflict, Pakistan, though battered and broken, was not completely obliterated, and it claimed victory. It continues to celebrate its victory. And the same thing happens with Iran. The Iran, because it continues to stand in the way it does, there has not been a regime change, there has been damages, loss of life and property and military assets, but they still exist as a nation in the way they did before the war began. And that is why Khamenei claims victory, because they managed to bear the beating that was given down to them, as well as cause harm towards the Israeli regime. This is one of the very key reasons why Israel is very wary of Iran, because Iran continues to be very, very aggressive towards it. It has called it not a Jewish nation, but a Zionist nation, which tends to lean towards the religious extremism of Judaism, right? So Jewish culture. So that's what it kind of shows his perspective, Iran, Khomeiни's perspective of viewing Israel as an aggressor of a very religious sensitive region. So this is something that is expected, and it has been celebrating this victory for the past 2 days. It's just come to the notice of the world today.
Yes, and Shruti, we've also said that that Iran has delivered a hard slap to the US, to use his words. We obviously saw the response that Iran made, a strike on the military base in Doha, which is said to have caused no casualties. Donald Trump claimed that the Iranians actually let the Americans know about this strike that was incoming before it happened. So, what are your thoughts on his claims of Tehran delivering a hard slap to Washington?
Well, this is the same language that they used in 2020 when they responded to the death of Soleimani, when they kind of responded with attacks on a US base, and they kind of presented it in the same language as they're presenting it now, that we have struck the US, the big boss of the world, a big superpower, and they've still let us be. So for them, mere existence is a claim for victory. This is also a face-saving measure for its internal politics, because until and unless it shows that the same language that Netanyahu is presenting to the Israelis as a warrior leader, so until and unless the Khamenei regime, the Ayatollah regime, is able to present itself as a strong warrior regime, they will face pushback from their own people. And this language continues to reflect that particular mentality, that while on one hand we do know that the Qatari regime has confirmed, the Emir of Qatar has confirmed that they were informed by Iran, and by informing Qatar where this attack was happening, where the ammunition as well as assets were moved away, they have managed to ensure that they've only hit the air base. So there is a reason why Qatar is upset with Iran, because the barrage of the volley of missiles that came was only causing cost to Qatar, not to US. US had moved its assets and its people away. And so we know that the prior warning was given with full knowledge that it would be shared with US, and US would save its skin. Iran knows that if it directly manages to kill or damage military assets in people or person or machine of US, the response will be far greater. So that is why these warnings they issue, and that is why they continue to claim we have hit US base without actually causing any damage to US and only causing damage to Qatar itself.
Yes, and we've also seen for the first time an Iranian spokesperson admit severe damage on those bases that the US struck. Communication has been muddy with this, Shruti. We've seen from both from the US domestically, and also we've had Iran refusing to kind of give any insight into them. But today we've got some updates. Iran have said that the damage on their nuclear facilities is severe. However, what we do not know is the location or the possible truth of this uranium that could have been moved. However, let's first start on the damage to the nuclear facilities, which has now been admitted by Iran. What are your thoughts? Seemingly, this could be a success if the Iranians are being honest. What are your thoughts?
Well, I don't have any single doubt that the bases were hit. I do have doubt whether they were obliterated, as I've said before, earlier, we spoke earlier. And this is exactly where the point of contention and the muddiness of information comes in. Those sites continue to exist. They are there, but they're not functional. They will not be functional because the bunker busters ensured that there is enough damage that any functionality is severely damaged. They will not be able to be used for nuclear enrichment or bomb making or any of those activities. So in a way, US did hit it, but those sites continue to exist. They can be repaired and they can be remade into something that is again going to be a threat to mankind. So this is where the muddiness, the line of is kind of blurred, where people get confused whether it has been hit or whether it hasn't been hit, whether how much of the damage has happened. If you remember, during all the 12 days, the Iranian regime continued to say that no, there is no damage and our nuclear facilities and our nuclear equipment is safe. They continued to say this till today, where they had admitted that yes, our sites were hit and there has been significant damage. Now, how significant is the damage is something only IAEA will be able to tell us, and as of now, they are not allowed to enter Iran and do their due inspection. So we are waiting for them to be allowed inside Iran and find where that 400 kgs of enriched uranium is and find out exactly how big is the damage and whether Iran had actually gone beyond the required levels of enrichment and engagement with uranium and was going towards the path of nuclear development as a warhead.
Shruti, what I finally want to touch on is the possibility of talks resuming between the United States and Iran. Does diplomacy have a place in the current climate, especially between the now relationship between the United States and Iran?
There needs to be diplomacy, and very hard so, because you see, when the JCPOA, which United States walked out of, because they had discovered that the 2003-2008 era, where Iran was sanctioned again for kind of developing into increased sanctions on Iran, was trying to develop into weapon head at that time. And then JCPOA was with the P5+1, that is all the veto powers of UN, +1 was Germany. All of these signed a agreement where there were restrictions placed. Sanctions placed, and Iran had agreed that it will not enrich beyond 3%. It will not use Fordo and Isfahan. It was only going to use its Natanz enrichment place and would only use it for civil use. At that table, when it signed it, it was allowed to partial lifting of sanctions was done and was allowed to trade. In 2018, US found that the missiles were still being made. When the parallel structure, maybe the warhead was not being developed, but parallel structures that could lead to a nuclear warhead were being developed. And that is when US, under President Trump, Regime 1, walked out. And after that, they have accelerated, and you have seen the results which the IAEA are claiming, that 60% enriched uranium, which has no peaceful use. It cannot be used for anything else except as a stage between development, in the development cycle of nuclear warheads. So US wants Iran back on the table. The JCPOA, which the other 5 members are still following, because no new sanctions were issued in 2020, though Trump 1 era had tried to impose new sanctions on Iran because they had walked out in 2018. Those sanctions did not come in place. According to the JCPOA, the first stage gets over in 10 years, which is this year, October 2025. When that happens, Iran will be able to use more facilities legally, more sanctions will be open, and more avenues will be open. So this means that Iran will be richer, will be stronger, and will be allowed to develop weapons because it has proven as a record. It was like a parole in terms of jail time. It's like a parole given to Iran that, okay, now you can probably behave like a more civilized society. But that's not the case that has happened. So the world wants Iran back on the nuclear table, talking diplomacy, talking trades and sanctions. But I do not know whether after the battering that they have been through, they probably realize they can live without the world and with the sanctions. So we all want to see it on the table, but I do not know whether they will be very considerate of the world and its requirements.
Shruti Das Gupta, thank you very much for joining us on the program and for your insight as always. Well, that's all that we have time for, but we will continue